Oh man, it's a happening. Our last Get Your News On with Ron for the week. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Let's see if anybody is saying good morning yet. We have a lot to talk about today. We do. And I'm starting a little early today because unfortunately I have to end a little early today. Because there was a comedy festival going on in Burbank, and I participated yesterday. I'll be participating again today. So that's what we're dealing with. Got a lot on my mind, and we got a lot to talk about. Oh man, just that Get Your News On with Ron morning, huh? What's up, Andrew? What's up, Dayzilla? Good morning. Good to see you. I hope you guys are doing well. Hello, Chemo. Hello, Edwin. Take a sip of coffee with me, would ya? Hi, Susan. How are you? We're starting with your article today because it actually goes into the question I wanted to ask. I'm going to write an article in the next day or two about how I am leading the fight on a state level for municipal internet and co-ops. That's awesome. That is awesome. What's up, Long Beach? How are you, man? Good to see you. I'm going to the Kenya Dawson Andrew Jackson Jihad show next week. I'm excited for that. We'll talk about it more on Music Monday, I'm sure. At least I hope so. Yes, Edwin, that is correct. Yeah, we're gonna touch on that briefly. She had a great life. And we kind of knew it was gonna happen. And she's resting in power, you know. Hey, Ron, love your show. Thank you, Chris. Also, even Indiana resident Republicans hate Pence. It's good to know. I used to live in Indiana. I went to college there. So it's good to know that, even the Republicans are coming around a little bit. Because that was a rough state politically. All right, we're almost at 30, you guys. Once we hit that 30 mark, we will officially begin. Until then, we're just sipping on coffee and talking, chatting like people do. And by the way, for anyone watching on Facebook or Twitter, the chats I'm responding to are over on the YouTube. I can only respond to one chat. You know how it goes. And I know for some of you it is, in fact, afternoon. You East Coasters. Indianapolis County only has an 18% voter turnout? Seriously? That's disappointing. I know, Chris, I was incredibly proud that whenever I went, especially in 2008, when Indiana went blue for the first time in a long time, I was pretty proud of Monroe County, where Bloomington is, and I was always proud that was like one of the blue counties. When I was in college and stuff like that, I was always stoked that it's like, yeah, we're representing. We were one of the blue dots in Indiana, and I'm hoping to get back there. I don't know where you're at in Indiana, Chris, but I'm really trying. When we do the Midwest leg of the Progressive Comedy Tour, I'm really hoping it includes a stop in Bloomington. What's up, Matthew? What's up, Karen? What's up, Dwayne? Good to see you guys. Hello, Frederick. Oh. And guys, we are pretty much at 30. Are we over 30 yet? You guys get the numbers quicker than me. Let me know if we're over 30. I have us at. Oh, we are 30. Oh, okay. All right. I'm behind. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. What does that mean? That means you guys tweet me articles. We talk about them. And that's how we do this show. I'm seeing all this stuff for the first time. You know. Or you can go to our Reddit subsection. Let me pull that up real quick. That's just Reddit. Reddit.com/r/GetYourNewsOnWithRon if you want to drop some stuff into the Reddit subsection. So here's what's going on, you guys. First of all, a real quick shout out. Aretha Franklin has passed. Some of you may remember if you were here on Monday for Music Monday, we talked about Aretha Franklin. She was in hospice at that point. It was, the writing was kind of on the wall. She wasn't going to be with us much longer. She was in Detroit, surrounded by family and friends, and she has passed. So her suffering is over, which is good that her suffering is over. And we kind of summed it up on Monday. I mean, she was an incredible voice, incredibly influential. When you say the words Aretha Franklin, that's all you need to say. Like, you don't need to expand on it. She was one of those forces. You know what I mean? You say Aretha Franklin, and someone's singing back at you. Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, you know what I mean? So she is resting in power. She was pretty young, really. She was only 76. That's too young to die, in my opinion. But you know what? We talk about years in your life versus life in your years. She may not have had a ton of years in her life, comparatively speaking. 76 isn't bad. It certainly isn't bad. It's pretty solid. Still a little young, but still pretty solid, I'd say. So, she certainly had a lot of life in her years. There's no doubt about that. So, rest in power, Aretha. Rest in power. Now, on to something that is significantly less pleasant. I'm sure you guys have all been paying attention to what's been going on in the Catholic Church as of recent in my home state, actually, of Pennsylvania. We haven't talked about it yet on the show, but Susan shared an article today, and I was going to kind of use it as the question point today, so I'll go ahead and do it. So let's go to the article here. And this is, there were reports out of Pennsylvania that basically there were a large number of priests that were sexually abusing children over the years, and it was swept under the rug. And here's a report that there was even more horrific things going on. Let's go to this article. Grand jury report, priests ran a child porn ring in Pittsburgh Diocese. Pittsburgh is my hometown. This guy here, Bishop Donald Worrell, he was the bishop ever since I was a kid. And I remember, Bishop Worrell would come to my grade school. He would also come to my high school. I went to Catholic grade school and high school. And it was actually kind of cool whenever we would see him as children, because we knew we were getting the day off. That was the sort of tradition. The bishop would come and he would give you the day off. He'd say, "No more school today," and everyone would be like, "Yay!" And then we would go home. So we were stoked to see this dude. And Bishop Donald Worrell presided over the funeral of a guy named Reverend George Zerus, who was one of the priests accused of participating in the ring of predatory priests. George said he never discussed the nude Polaroids or the twisted secret gift he and the other kids had been given decades ago by the men who preyed on them. These weren't the kind of things you could share without feeling humiliated, especially not if you grew up tough, like he did on the south side of Pittsburgh. But you can't outrun your nightmares forever. So on December 17th, a week before Roman Catholics around the world celebrated Christmas, George met with a Pennsylvania grand jury and told it about... Oh, sorry, that's an awkward sentence. And told it about the Reverend George Zerus, a friendly young priest who once took him to a rectory in Munhall, a borough about 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. I took a girl to prom that was from Munhall. That's near where I grew up. A borough about 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh, and introduced him to some friends. This is going to be hard to read. The Revs, Francis Pucci, Richard Zula, and Francis Luddy. During a conversation about religious statues, the priest told George to get into a bed and remove his shirt and strike a pose like Jesus on the cross. Then they instructed him to strip off his pants and underwear, according to a grand jury report released Tuesday. In the unnerving moments that followed, George claimed that Zulu and Pucci began taking photos of him on a Polaroid camera. All of the priests giggled and then added the photos of George to a collection of photos of other teen boys. According to the grand jury, if you're uncomfortable now, you should be. You should be uncomfortable right now. I am. This is disgusting. According to the grand jury, these men and another priest, the Reverend Robert Wolk, were part of a ring of predatory priests who raped children, shared intelligence on potential victims, and manufactured child pornography in parishes and rectories. And by the way, just a disclaimer, this is from just a local newspaper, by the way. This is not some, so some of you that are apologists for the Catholic Church, and I know you're out there, some of you that, this might be embellished, this is from a local newspaper, okay? This is from a local newspaper in eastern Pennsylvania. This group of priests used whips, violence, and sadism in raping their victims. Reads one line of the nearly 900-page document, which outlines horrific abuse that occurred in Pittsburgh and 5 other Catholic dioceses, including Allentown, across the state. The report said the men gave a specific gift to the children they favored, something they could wear that would mark them as prime targets for abuse. Zurus has told me that they, the priests, would give their boys, their altar boys, or their favorite boys, these crosses. So he gave me a big gold cross to wear. He remembered the rectory photo session as a degrading experience. According to Tuesday's report, Zula engaged in violent sexual activity with a child at a rectory in the Pittsburgh Diocese. Church reports further describe parties Zula hosted for children that featured marijuana, alcohol, oral sex, attempted anal sex, and whips. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 1990 and died last year. Walk was accused of sexually assaulting 2 adolescent brothers over a 6-year period, pleaded guilty to involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. Charges against Pucci were dropped because of a statute of limitations had expired. Maybe because there were powerful people helping to cover it up. And I tweeted yesterday that Pope Francis is a lot like the Obama of popes. And what I mean by that is he says a lot of great things, and he is incredibly likable. Meanwhile, nothing really changes. And some people were telling me that, oh no, things have changed. And what evidence did they have to point to? They had to point to nice things he said. He said nice things. No policy changes. And as far as this stuff goes, have some priests faced prison? Yes. But it wasn't because of the Catholic Church. It was because of people nonstop pursuing justice. And in many cases because they turned themselves in. It wasn't because of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church as a whole has covered it up. Does that mean every single person affiliated with the church was involved? Of course not. Most probably weren't. But enough participated and enough willingly covered this up or turned a blank eye to it. that this is absolutely horrific. And I decided years ago this was a team I no longer wanted to be part of. I have not gone to church voluntarily since the age of 12. And I stopped going altogether as soon as I no longer had to, basically. And I feel a lot better without religion in my life. At all. And these are people that I was supposed to... These were supposed to be role models to me as a child. Donald Wuerl, who I can... At least you can say, I mean, the guy was at the predatory priest's funeral. He, at the very least, complicitly, passively accepts this stuff. I don't know of anybody at a high level that has left the clergy entirely saying, this is disgusting. And yet people are still total apologists for this. I mean, how can you passively accept such go see The Keepers. Watch the movie Hear No Evil. The church is incredibly guilty at sweeping this under the rug, at covering it up, at shaming victims, and at blackmail. They've done all of that. All of that. And yet, as far as the law enforcing any types of punishment, it has been at a minimum. There should be collusion cases against the entire institution. There should be class action lawsuits. And I wouldn't shed one tear if it bankrupted the Vatican. In fact, I'd be happy if it did. That would be justice. A class action suit that bankrupts the Vatican. So, I guess my question is, what religion were you guys raised with, if any, and do you still practice it? Let's talk about our religious views. As I'm sure comes as a shock to all of you, I no longer practice anything. I was raised Catholic. I left the team, and they make commercials asking people to come home. Come home. Like, they literally have commercials where they're like, if you've been astray, you should come back. Has anything changed? No, but please come back. Like, it's so sad. And because of stuff like this, I see the importance. And granted, my reason for leaving the Catholic Church wasn't even because of all this. I mean, I left before any of that stuff had really surfaced. I mean, I left just because I didn't believe in any of it, and still don't. And then, of course, all this stuff started coming to the surface later on. And I believe, like, the early aughts and stuff was when a lot of it first started surfacing. And especially, and now I'm seeing news close to my hometown, which is that much more, I was an altar boy as a kid. I was one of the top altar servers. I should say altar servers because by the time I was there, they did allow girls to be altar servers as well. They progressed. By the way, if you ever want to know the real reason women can't be priests, I'll go to the chat, and if you guys want to know, I'll tell you. Because I unfortunately know this information. It is the most batshit absurd explanation that is literally zombie-esque that you will ever hear. And I'll tell you if you want to know. I'll tell you if you want. And you know what? And I get it. There are still some great people involved. There really are. There are some people in Catholic social thought that are progressive activists. There are some radical priests out there that are committed to a life of service, that do service projects, that I can only imagine that type of discipline. I don't know why they stay on this team. Maybe it's because that's just the umbrella they know, and they're able to do good with that umbrella, so they... I don't know. I can't relate to it. So I'm not trying to use a broad brush. There's good apples and bad apples everywhere. I know that. But you know what? when you use that type of dismissal, you're dismissing a systemic problem. There's a systemic problem in the Catholic Church. There's a systemic problem of turning a blind eye to abuse and ignoring it and actually abusing power in so many ways. Not just in the most on the surface way of abusing children, of sexually abusing children, but also in the administrative way of then shaming and blackmailing victims. So, if you're still on the team and you're angry at me, do something about the team. Realize that it's a systemic issue. Do you think if every parishioner said, until something is really done about this, until there is systemic justice and a systemic solution to this problem, we ain't paying our dues? Do you think if people did that en masse, nothing would change? I bet it would. Because these institutions care about money above all else. George Carlin said it best: when it comes to pure bullshit, a businessman cannot hold a candle to a clergyman. He was right then, and he's right today. Because between when he said that in the 90s and now, nothing's changed. Actually, I take that back. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. You know who shouldn't be tax exempt anymore? The Mormon Church. They should be paying taxes right now because they made a clear violation when Prop 8 went down, and they faced no consequences for it. And I think the only just solution to all this would be a complete overhaul of all the administration in the Catholic Church, a complete revamping of it, and a class action suit that, yeah, I would like to see bankrupt the Vatican. Completely bankrupt the Vatican. And the only people that have any chance at keeping their funding are the people that are actually doing nothing but charity. I'd like to see those groups keep their funding. The Catholic social thought groups, I'd like to see them keep their funding because they're actually doing good in the world. But as far as the good Pope and his $9 million costumes, it's a freaking costume, by the way. It's a costume. That goes bye-bye. That goes away. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Chili says, I've been to Catechism Temple and under a redwood I chose the forest. I like that. That belongs on a t-shirt. Chili, make a t-shirt out of that. I've been to Catechism Temple and under a redwood I choose the forest. Brian, I don't like speaking in tongues. There were teachers at my school that claimed they could do that. There was this religion teacher. He was a weirdo among weirdos. And he would, like, randomly start speaking in tongues. I don't know what he was actually doing. Wicked Guru says, I want to know why women can't be priests just because you hyped it. Man, now I feel like I oversold it. Damn it. You guys are going to be... I'm going to tell you, and you're going to be like, that wasn't that great, Ron. That wasn't that great. The Double B says, I would forbid minors attending any religious institutions. Jason says Scientology should be taxed. I think all of them should be taxed. Scientology I think is a cult, but I think they should all be taxed. And Dwayne used the famous Groucho quote, "I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member." Celeste says organized religion causes more problems than it solves. I agree with you 110%. And Daniel points out they're all cults. You're right, but I think some are more severe than others. Jonathan Hyatt, I'm not familiar, Mark. I'm not familiar. If you want to send me some stuff, I'd be happy to look into it, but I'm not familiar with who that is. The Catholic Church, Derek says, the Catholic Church is set up in a way that each parish is a separate legal entity. This limits financial judgments against the church as a whole. Whoa, my partner, Ashley, says this. My partner went to Catholic school. He had a class that taught speaking in tongues. Wow. So wait, I thought that wasn't something you can teach. That's something that you just have a calling or whatever, right? Isn't that... Are you serious? All right. Andy wants to know, why can't women be priests? Because they would be priestess. Duh. All right, so I'll tell you guys, and I hope I didn't oversell this. Here is why women can't be priests, all right? And I heard this actually on NPR. It was an NPR segment where they had an atheist, basically, or a person that was a secularist, saying that women should be able to be priests. And then they had somebody from the Catholic Church defend why women can't be. And this person sounded very intelligent. And they explained why women can't be priests. And somehow they did this with a straight face. And they didn't think they sounded insane at all. But here is the unfiltered version of why women can't be priests, okay? So Jesus was a dude. According to their narrative and their dogma, Jesus was a guy. And he, the story's true that he was crucified and then he came back to life. And so during the Eucharist, which is when you take communion in Catholicism, you take this host and you eat it and it's bread, and they call it the host because Jesus comes in there and he is like present in the Eucharist. His body is, that's why they say, eat my body, drink my blood, which, doesn't sound creepy at all. And so that's, and it's symbolic, right? But they do believe it's a little more than symbolic. He is present in the Eucharist, not to the point where you're being a cannibal, but the body of Christ is present in it. And I know you're thinking, Ron, this already sounds kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I know, but that's this is what it is. So here's why women can't be priests. You need to channel the soul of Jesus into the Eucharist, and you need a vessel, and that vessel needs to be the same gender that Jesus was. So because Jesus was a dude, you need a dude to channel that. So zombie Jesus can't transfer through a woman. Zombie Jesus needs a man to get into the Eucharist. That's why women can't be priests. That's why Ron hasn't got a clue. What about... All right, well then what's your theory? That is what a member of the Catholic Church said on NPR. That's not my argument, David. That's far from my argument. That's why women can't be priests. What's another explanation? That is why they said women can't be priests. Of course it's absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd. D. Dean, if you're saying I don't know what I'm talking about, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. These were the explanations given to us. I heard a report on NPR. That was the explanation given. If you are aware of something I'm not, please share with us. Why can't women be priests? That is literally why. Because they need somebody to channel Jesus, and it needs to be a male because Jesus was a male. That is their explanation why women can't be priests. I don't hear an alternative explanation from anybody. I was raised Mormon, and it's kind of weird in retrospect how they prioritize the Book of Mormon over everything else, JK points out. Yeah. So, Susan, thank you for sharing that. So, all the stuff that's been reported this week is even worse than we realized. I mean, I don't know how it could get worse, but somehow it manages to, and I'm sure it's going to keep getting worse. All right, so let's move on to other topics. ICE accused of entrapping married immigrants seeking green cards. The Trump administration's immigration rhetoric is often framed as a pro-law and order campaign against undocumented immigration rather than a set of racist, inhumane policies against people of color. The facade is laughable, as the administration proves every day. The latest outrage, the Immigrant and Customs Enforcement Agency, that's ICE, is coordinating with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to target undocumented immigrants married to U.S. citizens. Undocumented people are legally allowed to stay in the U.S. with their citizen spouse while waiting for a green card, according to Obama-era regulations that are still in effect. But the ACLU says the federal government is using this process as a chance to prey on would-be citizens and deport them. Some claims in the legal brief are based on emails between ICE agents that were obtained by the ACLU. These emails appear to blatantly admit that entrapping immigrants with innocent-seeming interviews and purposely obscuring the practice from the press. Andrew Graham, a Boston-based ICE officer, said the agency generally receives from USCIS a list of immigrants seeking legal residency who have already been ordered for deportation, had re-entered the country illegally, or were considered an egregious criminal alien. Graham said ICE then works with USCIS to schedule interviews so that ICE agents can be present to make an arrest. He noted ICE prefers to spread out the interviews to ease the workload on its agents and to prevent generating negative media interest. Oh, wow. We're targeting married couples, making it seem like an innocent interview. Meanwhile, we have an ICE agent outside ready to arrest. We don't want to generate any negative press. Wouldn't want any negative press there. Yeah, who would... who would give any negative press? Wow. That's so terrible. This is not surprising at all. We should have expected that this was going to come next. Because they're just going after people. I mean, ICE is just a brutal legal gang. That's what they are. We already have enough corrupt law enforcement. We don't need any more. That's why we should get rid of ICE. We have basic border security. We had it before ICE. ICE hasn't been around. ICE has been around since the early aughts. We don't need to reform them. We need to get rid of them. They're not necessary. This is what we're spending our taxpayer dollars on instead of giving people health care and educational opportunities. and living wages and a jobs program and ending the wars. Instead of doing that, we're throwing bomb money and we're letting ICE brutalize people. Brutalize married people that are waiting for a green card. Do you know what that process is like, by the way? I've never been through it personally, but I have friends, I have a lot of friends in academia. A lot of them come from all over the world. Some of them fall in love and get married. A good friend of mine from college, she married a German guy. It is a brutal process to get that green card and to get married and to, they really screen you intensely to make sure it's not a sham marriage. So these people have already been through a brutal process just to be with the person they love. And now they have to worry about a scam interview, all intended for an ICE agent that wants to arrest them. Land of the free. Land of the free. And I'm sure some of you, and maybe some of you even are married to someone that's not from this country, or maybe you yourself are not from this country and you're married to an American person. So you can probably speak better than I can. But, I have had a lot of friends, and it's an insane process. I can't speak to every single detail. I haven't been through it personally, but it is a very intense, insane process. And it's a lot of work and a lot of paperwork. And now you have to worry about a scam interview on top of that. It's absolutely disgusting. Thank you for sharing. That's funny. That was a funny sentence I just said. That's absolutely disgusting. Thank you for sharing. That's incredibly gross and really depressing, and now we're all more sad. Thank you for sharing. This is Get Your News On with Ron. Chris says, I prefer my country like I prefer my soda with no ice. See, the what I like to say, Chris, this country is a lot like espresso, better without ice. Let's see. And we're going to do an Ajit Pai follow-up. I don't know, as of us being live right now, if there's been a follow-up, but we're going to find out soon. Let's go to Marcus's article first. I'll give it a Get Your News On with Ron retweet. So Trump's big military parade will reportedly cost way more than previously expected. Lovely. Another good use of money. The grand military parade that President Donald Trump wants to hold in the nation's capital in November is going to cost $92 million. $80 million more than the original estimate. According to the report by CNBC, the Department of Defense now assesses that the parade will cost significantly more, accusing $50 million from DoD and $42 million from interagency partners. The original costs were in the realm of $12 million. What a good use. What a good... We have a military parade every Sunday, and on select Thursday nights, and select Saturdays, and Monday nights. Is it every Thursday now? But anyway, whenever the NFL plays, we have a military parade then. We pretty much have a military parade before college football, too, to an extent. We already have plenty of military parades. Ask somebody that's done 4 tours in Afghanistan how much they like that stuff. My cousin's done 4 tours in Afghanistan. He usually gets PTSD when something like that goes on, by the way. He usually doesn't even want to be in the room. So, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is not supporting the troops. That's not what this is. You know what supporting the troops means? Supporting the troops means not putting them in harm's way unless it is 1,000% necessary. And there has yet to be a necessary war in my lifetime. I don't think there's such a thing as a necessary war. But as far as conflict, when all other avenues were exhausted, I have not seen that in my lifetime ever. I have not seen anything close to that in my lifetime. Every war in my lifetime has been based on lies and has been based on profit and the corporatocracy. Every single war. And counting. And we should have a military parade. It's unbelievable. This is what this administration is focused on. You know what else we have no idea how much it's actually going to cost, by the way? The wall. That racist idea of Donald Trump. And any Republican would have went along with it. Hell, Hillary Clinton was okay with the idea of a wall. And yes, she was. You can look it up. So stupid. I don't know what else to say about that. So stupid. All right, let's see if there's an Ajit Pai follow-up here. Celeste says, advocate peace, help the troops. CG points out less than 1% of the military budget actually goes to the troops. Actually, I think you used the greater than, but I'm assuming you meant less than. I think that's the greater than symbol, but I think you meant less than. And that's why and Chris specifies too that the military budget is separate from the veterans benefits budget, but there's only a push towards the military budget. That's why one of the things I would ever, if I was ever in office, one of the things that I would do is I would talk about slashing the military budget and the veterans budget, or not in the but the military budget overall, and I would lump veterans in with that. But what I would call for is I would say, look, it's not that, we're not funding this the right way. So what I would call for a slash in the budget, and I would also call for a task force that decides what that budget is going to be used for. And that task force can only consist of veterans. Nobody else. Only veterans are allowed to be in that task force. And they decide how the budget's going to be used. When it comes to veterans benefits, when it comes to what you provide for the people on the ground, there would be. Do you think if that happened, do you think somebody in the Air Force who ruined their boots would have to pay out of their own pocket for a replacement pair? I don't think so. Christian has a cool question. Ron Placone, do you think Trump's buildup of pride and pro-war sentiment could somehow foreshadow a draft? Is that crazy? No, because if we had a draft, people would really start talking about this endless war and they would try to end it. So that wouldn't, they don't want that. The military-industrial complex, the people that are profiting from war, they do not want to end our endless war because they're profiting off of it. So, no, I don't think we'd ever see a draft. But who knows? But yeah, I don't think so. So let's look up Ajit Pai and let's see if there's an update on his court case, or his hearing, rather. We talked about it earlier this week. The hearing is supposed to take place today. Hopefully, it's not political theater. And here we go. Ajit Pai says he had doubts about the attack, quote unquote, but didn't say anything. Okay, so to revisit this, when the Ajit Pai FCC was trying to repeal net neutrality, the FCC comments were blowing up. The FCC website was blowing up with people commenting in favor of net neutrality because the public overwhelmingly supports net neutrality, as they should. Ajit Pai and the FCC claimed that there was a cyber attack, and that's why the website went down, because during the comment period, the website went down. Ajit Pai claimed it was a cyber attack. There's no evidence linking that it was a cyber attack. In fact, there's more evidence pointing to it wasn't. So they lied about that. The chairman stumbled through questions about the non-existent attack on the net neutrality comment system during a Senate Commerce Committee hearing. Ajit Pai says he was asked to keep quiet about the fact that a cyber attack his agency claimed happened never did. Last year, an FCC site for people to submit comments went down due to a flood of commenters. The organization, with its head being Ajit Pai, told the public it was a targeted attack. That wasn't true. So at the hearing today, Pai told the Senate committee he had his doubts about the targeted attack from the beginning, but went along with it. Once we knew what the conclusions were, it was very hard to stay quiet. We wanted the story to get out because it vindicated what we were saying, that we were relying on the chief information officer. Last year, the electronic comment filing system that was collecting comments was overwhelmed. So the reports of an attack weren't true. The chief information officer told them it was, and then they had doubts about it, but they wanted to spread it anyway. So here's more of Pai's bullshit. It's a difficult position to be in. The story in this report vindicates my position that I was relying on the CIO. So basically he's saying it's not my fault. I was relying on this faulty information. It was in our interest to get it out sooner. I did what I thought was the right thing to do, which was stick by the IG. So stick by the wrong story even when you know it's the wrong story. Good job, Ajit Pai. You also think repealing net neutrality is a good thing, even though 83% of the public favors net neutrality. You also think it's the right thing to thumb your nose at the general public because you get a lot of money. You get a lot of money from the corporate internet service providers like Comcast and Verizon and AT&T. What a liar. What an unapologetic liar. And Ajit Pai, who brought him into the fold? Barack Obama did. And then Donald Trump made him the head. It's a big club. It's a big club, and the last thing they care about is our free and open internet. So Ajit Pai is basically just trying to pass the buck. He's trying to just pass the blame. So it happened at 10 a.m. Eastern. So he's basically trying to place all the blame on his chief information officer. So here's another article I found. So get your popcorn ready. Sorry, my margins are so bad today. Let me try to... There we go. All right, let's see if I can fix that up a little bit. It's kind of weird to sort of see here. Let me see. There we go. That's better. All right. We're doing it live, folks. We're doing it live. All right. That'll work. It's a little better. So get your popcorn ready. This guy's been spreading nonsense since he took office, and it appears he might finally be held accountable. And it was streaming over on C-SPAN. So they know that the story of the attack was nonsense. Ajit Pai's defense is, well, I had my suspicions, but I was going by what the chief information officer told me, and I thought it'd be best to stick to that story because my opinions can be bought and paid for by the highest bidder because I am a corporate tool and I am corrupt to the bone, and I don't care. That's his defense. That's Ajit Pai's defense. So we'll see. All right, so the hearing's out there. That's the gist of the hearing. And you can go over to C-SPAN. I'm sure you can watch the replay. We're waiting on consequences, if there will be any. Is this political theater? Maybe. Is this something more? Hopefully. Hopefully he gets removed his head, and hopefully, because of the negligence found in all this, they can use that to really force the CRA and overturn the net neutrality repeal. And again, we're still fighting for net neutrality in many different ways. What are some of the ways we're fighting? State-level net neutrality protections. We got a really good bill here in California. I wish Scott Wiener would come on this show to talk about it more. But he has since been not confirming. I really want to have him on to talk about net neutrality. He won't come on the show. We're also fighting back with, one of the task force I'm involved in, one of the task force Andrew's involved in over where Andrew lives, and we're trying to get municipal internet in our communities. And if we all do that in our community, we'll have municipal internet across the country. Municipal internet ends the net neutrality battle once and for all. Why? Because it takes the internet and it puts it in the hands of the public. And you pay your internet bill the same way you pay for your water or your sewage or your garbage. It becomes a city utility. The cities that have done this experience the best internet in the country at a reasonable price. So we are fighting back, and those are some of the ways we're fighting back. But this is a good thing that Ajit Pai is facing this hearing. Even if it's political theater, it's still a good thing because it's turning more people onto these issues. Will it be disappointing if it's nothing more than political theater? Absolutely. Is there a chance it's nothing more than political theater? Certainly. Might he face some real consequences? Hopefully. And hopefully they can say, this tarnishes the process. Because you faked this attack and lied about this attack, this tarnished the net neutrality hearing process. And we have to overturn that appeal. We have to enact the CRA. A couple other Republicans will get on board and overturn the CRA, or overturn the net neutrality repeal. But that's what happened at the hearing, gist of the hearing. Ajit Pai said, it's the chief information officer's fault. I just went by that information. It was tough to correct it. Don't you see what a hard position I'm in? Ajit Pai, you're one of the most disliked people in the country. You're going to have a hard time garnering any sympathy from anybody that knows who you are. All right, let's end today going to the chat. Municipal internet is the way to go. Garden Gnome points out. I agree with you. Matthew points out, I thought we were supposed to trust Ajit Pai because he has all those oversized coffee mugs. Yeah, what grown adult would use those, by the way? He looks like such a clown with those goofy coffee mugs. Andy says, if you frame it as a permanent jobs program, you can get GOP reps on board easily. Maybe. Maybe. Has anyone ordered a Ron shirt and received it yet, Karen asks. Well, I don't know who's ordered one, but I do know that they will be on their way shortly. So if you ordered one and you haven't gotten one yet, hold tight. They are definitely coming. They are definitely coming. See what else you guys are saying. Some of you guys are sending puns, which makes me very, very happy. I can't find all of them. But, Moonchild points out Ajit Pai is getting so much gray hair. Yes, he is. That guy looks like he has aged about 10 years. And maybe that's what happens when you sell your soul. Maybe that's what happens when you sell your soul. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. A Dingo, also a former Catholic, non-practicing, never had anything terrible happen. Me too. You know, I mean, I was, and that what freaks me out, which I started to say, would really freak me out about reading all this and knowing that it happened in my hometown of Pittsburgh, knowing so much happened in my hometown of Pittsburgh. I was an altar server. I was one of the lead altar servers when I was in grade school. So had there been a predatory priest in the church I grew up in, there's a good chance I would have been a victim. You know what I mean? Because I was just always... what I'm saying is if there was a predatory priest, they would have had plenty of opportunities. Because I was one of the main altar servers. I was always there. And a lot of times, you and the priest were the only people in the church. It amazes me that the Catholic Church survived this long. Me too. I'm a proud Sunday school dropout. Ha! Religion is big business. Abso-freaking-lutely. Cool. Well, guys, we are totally out of time. I have to end a few minutes early today because there's a comedy festival going on in Burbank, and I am participating in it. I did a panel yesterday, and there's a couple things I'm doing today, and it goes all day, so I have to get over to it. Guys, the podcast is coming out tomorrow, so check it out. The podcast is very new. The podcast has only been around for a couple weeks, so please do check it out. Yeah. Get Your News On with Ron. We are on iTunes and all the other distribution platforms. Check it out. Write a review. And want to support this show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/Ron Placone. Give what you can level. Tons of perks. And it's a good time. Also, shout out to our sponsor, ZT.com, ZHIT.com. Their tea, it kind of rules. Yeah. This was an intense conversation today. I enjoyed it very much. We'll be back on Monday for another Music Monday. And, speaking of Music Monday, got to say it again because it's worth repeating. Aretha Franklin, rest in power. Oh, real quick, before we sign out, I got to say something else. Freya, you mentioned Democracy Now! I want to say this real quick disclaimer before we sign out here. I am a huge fan of Amy Goodman in Democracy Now! Recently I said, I believe it was on the Jimmy Dore show, and I still stand by this, I had been disappointed with Democracy Now! For a while. I had been. That was just true. You're allowed to be disappointed with something and still be an overall supporter, you know? And I thought that Democracy Now! Had gotten really Russiagate heavy for a while to the point where I kind of stopped checking them out. I stopped following them as much because they were basically just repeating corporate media Russiagate stuff. I turned to Democracy Now! To get the news they're not reporting on. But as of recent, I feel like they've been getting more back to the Democracy Now! I know and love. And I'm talking this week. So I don't know if you guys have been tuning in some this week. I feel like they're getting back to the Democracy Now! That I know and love. Maybe Noam Chomsky and Amy had a conversation off camera, and Noam said, Amy, what's going on? We need you, you know? I don't know, but I am going to say, because some people, they kind of were like, Ron, you're being too hard on Democracy Now! Look, I babbled like an idiot when I met Amy Goodman in person because I was so humbled to be in her presence. I have a lot of respect for her and Juan and the show as a whole. But if something's really letting me down, I'm going to say it. But I feel like recently they've kind of gotten back to the Democracy Now! That I know and love. So I hope that stays the case. And Aretha Franklin, rest in power. You guys rule. Thank you so much for being part of this. This has been Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. Podcast comes out tomorrow. We'll be back live on the stream Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll see you then. Have a wonderful weekend.